happened for me since the last time I was here back in August.
Много произошло за это время.
And one of the cool things that I had a chance to do was to go back to Ukraine for the first time.
И я впервые вернулся в Украину.
I didn't go to Kamenets. I went to Kiev.
Я был в Киеве.
But my dad tells me he's taking me to Kamenets this summer, so I'm looking forward to that.
И мой отец хочет меня еще раз забрать.
And the reason I went to Ukraine, I've got a few pictures up, was for the launch of the Slavic Bible commentary.
И причина, почему я был в Украине, там было открытие вот этого славянского библейского комментария.
Главный редактор Сергей Sannikov. I was invited by a missionary friend of mine who had funded this project to be their translator.
Я был приглашен туда как переводчик.
If you're wondering how I did,
если вас интересует, как у меня получалось,
my main task was to keep them out of jail.
Моя главная задача была сберегать их от тюрьмы.
And well, I'm here, and you can take my word for it that they're also home.
И они тоже дома.
I've got another picture here with Sergei's in the middle. But the main reason we went is the man on the left is Sergei Timchenko, and we had a chance to follow him around and capture his story.
И мы слушали вот этого человека слева здесь.
We heard about how in the 80s he would go, him and his church would spend 3 hours going into the woods in order to avoid the authorities.
В 80-х годах он с семьей, они уходили часто в лес, чтобы избегать авторитета.
Every Sunday they would take the last train out of the city for the last stop.
Они брали последний поезд.
And then they would walk for another 2 hours to find a clearing in the woods.
И потом еще шли пешком 2 часа.
In order to worship God.
Чтобы прославлять Бога.
And as I heard his story, I realized that his story is not unique.
И когда я слышал эту историю, я понял, что его история, она не уникальна.
I know that many of you, if we had a chance to talk, could also tell stories like that.
Я знаю, что у нас тоже есть много таких историй.
But God is good. Sergei is now he's helping lead the chaplaincy program for the entire nation of Ukraine.
Но Бог благ, и Сергей теперь ведет одну программу.
And his seminary is actually teaching courses at the National University Dragomanov.
И у него там есть семинария, и там учат курсы.
And so there's a lot of great work going on in Ukraine. They're working together with Christian organizations to train chaplains for the military.
Сейчас есть очень много хорошей работы, которая проводится в Украине.
And so I had the pleasure of following them around, interviewing people.
И для меня это привилегия была ходить с этими людьми.
And if you'd like to hear more, I'd love to tell you more about it.
И если хотите, я могу больше рассказать вам об этом.
A few years ago, there was a news story that had hit. It was all over Facebook, all over the different news outlets.
Несколько лет назад была интересная история в новостях.
What had happened? There was a lawsuit.
Был суд.
And lawsuits are nothing new in the United States of America. They happen all the time.
Можно сказать, что что здесь уникального? Суд всегда судится здесь в Америке.
The question is, what can you not get sued for?
Но вопрос в том, за что нельзя судить.
But this story was interesting because of who was involved.
Но эта история интересная из-за того, что кто был в этой истории.
You see, what had happened was there was this family, and they had a daughter who was 18.
Была семья, у них дочь, которой 18 лет было.
She was very bright. She was very smart. Did a lot of sports, and she was graduating her final year in high school.
Она была очень яркая, очень умная. Она заканчивала high school.
But at one point, the daughter decided that she didn't want to live under the rule of her parents.
И в один момент она решила, что она не хочет больше жить,
and so she moved out and moved
in
with a friend of hers.
И она решила жить с другом.
The parents told her, if you don't want to live by our rules, you're not going to live under our roof.
И родители сказали, если ты не хочешь жить с нами, то ты по нашим правилам, то ты не будешь жить с нами в нашем доме.
And so she decided that she'd rather move out.
И она решила уехать.
But the story doesn't end there, because her friend who she moved into, her friend's dad happened to be a lawyer.
Но история там не заканчивается. Она уехала к другу, и отец этого друга, он
He's a lawyer,
адвокат.
And turns out that not only did her parents say that if you're not going to follow our rules, you won't live under our roof, but also we're not going to pay for your college education.
Ее родители также ей сказали: ты не только не будешь с нами жить, мы также не будем платить, не будем оплачивать твою учебу.
And so she sued her parents.
Тогда она, судилась со своими родителями.
She sued her parents because they were threatening her future. If
Она
you can
подала на
believe
суд,
it.
потому что ее родители как бы ставили угрозу к ее будущему.
Now, for us, it might be hard to understand her thinking. If she made the decision to move out, she's an adult. Why are her parents still responsible?
Для нас это может как-то трудно понимать. Если она уехала, то не она ли уже за себя ответственна? Почему родители?
It's an interesting world we live in.
Это интересный мир, в котором мы живем.
Mark and a lot of in the Olivet discourse, Jesus talks about how parents will be going against children.
И Христос говорит об этом, как дети, они пойдут против своих родителей.
And we could add, children are suing their parents.
А вот здесь дети подают в суд на своих родителей.
It seems that we live in a society that doesn't recognize authority.
Будто мы живем в обществе, которое не признает никакого авторитета.
In America, the most prized thing is the individual, me.
В Америке это все про меня, все я.
It's almost as close as a religious zeal as we have as a country. Is this idea of myself? It's a sacred thing.
Это будто религия, которая есть в этой стране.
And so rather than submitting to others, we look for other avenues. We sue our parents.
И вместо того, чтобы повиноваться, часто мы
We do
ищем какие-то
many
другие
different
пути.
things. All right, but how do we as believers submit to each other?
Но как мы, как верующие, как мы повинуемся друг другу?
In a world that refuses to recognize authority.
В мире, где авторитет никто не признает.
Today, throw up the slide. Today, what we're going to see is we're going to see how spirit-led relationships challenge the individualism of our society.
Сегодня мы поговорим о том, как отношения, введенные духом, как это бросает вызов нормам общества сегодняшнего.
And our text is going to be Ephesians 6, 1-9.
Мы будем читать из Ефесянам 6 глава с 1 по 9 стих.
We're going to see the responsibilities that we have in relationships.
Мы увидим те обязанности, которые мы имеем в отношениях.
We're going to see the promised rewards.
И мы увидим обещанные награды.
And then finally, we're going to see the spirit-led routine for all Christians.
И третье — порядок.
So we're going to see the responsibilities, rewards, and finally we're going to take a look at the routines. And so let's put this text in context, Ephesians 6, 1-9. To understand Paul's train of thought, we have to go back to verse 18, where Paul talks about, he says in verse, don't be drunk with wine, but instead be filled with the Spirit. And this instead, being filled with the Spirit, takes up the rest of the next few verses where Paul explains what does it mean to be filled in the Spirit.
И в 18 стихе Павел говорит: не упивайтесь вином, но будьте наполнены духом. И это вот часть, наполняйтесь духом, это об этом говорится в следующих стихах.
Because he says there's a number of things, right? He says speaking, singing, making music, and giving thanks. These first four are what Paul understands to be filled by the Spirit.
И вот эти четыре вещи — говорить, петь, музыка и благодарить — это вещи, которые...
This is what it means to be filled by the Spirit.
Это то, что значит быть наполненным духом.
And the final part of this is submission.
И последняя часть этого — это повиновение.
Last time we were preaching here, Pastor Andre spoke about submission within the context of a marriage.
В прошлый раз пастор говорил о повиновении в сфере брака.
I missed preaching on that by 1 week. I would have loved to have told the church and all the couples how they should be, how the wives and husbands should treat each other, but God determined that I was perhaps more equipped to talk about children obeying their parents instead.
И мне почти попалась эта тема.
It's more appropriate to my experience.
Эта тема мне больше подходит к моему опыту.
And so we saw submission. The entire context of submission in marriage was the example of Christ and the church.
Итак, мы видели, что повиновение в браке — это как бы отражение повиновения церкви ко Христу.
Wives were to submit as to the Lord.
Жены должны были повиноваться мужам так же, как и Господу.
Husbands were to love their wives. How? As Christ loved the church.
И мужья должны любить жен так же, как Христос любит свою церковь.
What's interesting is Paul's addressing husbands and wives as equal partners.
И что интересно, что Павел, он говорит о муже и жене как равным партнерам.
Right, the wife she is supposed to submit to the husband, right? But it's something she decides to do.
Жена должна повиноваться мужу, это она должна решать делать.
But now we're transitioning to our text today. Paul is addressing a different kind of relationship.
Но мы сейчас сделаем маленькую транзицию, и Павел здесь говорит немножко о других вещах.
About those in authority and those under authority.
Тех, которые о авторитете, и тех, которые под авторитетом.
Children and parents.
Родители и дети.
Slaves and masters.
Рабы и господины.
So now that we've set our text within the context of Paul's letter, let's take a look at our first point, the responsibility of submission within a family.
И первое, что я бы хотел, о чем я хотел бы поговорить, это
the responsibility.
Ответственность.
Starting with verses 1 and 2. Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment that comes with a promise. The first commandment that comes with a promise. So children, obey your parents.
Так, первое. Дети, повинуйтесь своим родителям.
Children are addressed directly here.
Здесь прямое...
They're directly addressed. Paul is specifically talking to children here.
Павел специфически говорит к детям.
He's not telling parents, tell your children to obey. He's talking to children.
Он не говорит, родители, скажите это своим детям. Он говорит детям.
And so what we see is there's this understanding that children, right, they should be able to have an understanding of what it means to obey.
И мы видим здесь, что дети должны понимать, что это значит повиноваться своим родителям.
In the Old Testament, there was a strong tradition of obeying one's parents.
В Ветхом Завете была очень сильная такая традиция, где дети повиновались родителям.
In Judaism, parents were considered directly underneath God.
В иудаизме родители это были по авторитету, они были второе место после Бога.
And so within the context of the Mosaic law, submission to parents was because of their position, right? The God-given position.
И в этом контексте дети повиновались родителям, потому что Бог дал родителям такой авторитет.
But just like Paul changes the expectations with husbands and wives,
но так же как Павел меняет ожидания вот это.
He does the same thing here. Children are to obey. Why? Because they belong to the Lord.
Дети должны повиноваться здесь, потому что они принадлежат Господу.
All right. The command is viewed because of your relationship to Christ. Obey your parents.
Эта команда есть в результате отношения с Христом.
It's a slight change in emphasis, but it reflects the reality for the church in Ephesus. So it's a slight change in emphasis, but this is the new reality that they are in the Lord. All right, the motive for obedience is Christ.
Мотив к повиновению должен быть Христос.
Children are being asked to review their obedience to God, view their obedience to their parents in light of their obedience to God. It's the same thing. To obey one's parents is to obey the Lord.
И дети должны видеть свое повиновение к родителям как бы параллельно с повиновением ко Христу.
That's the responsibility of children.
Это ответственность детей.
All right, and now we move forward to the second class, the slaves, verses 5 through 7. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with deep respect and fear. Serve them sincerely as you would serve Christ. Try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. As slaves of Christ, do the will of God with all of your heart. Work with enthusiasm as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Again, the same reason that slaves are to obey their masters.
Итак, та же причина, почему рабы должны повиноваться своим господинам.
It's because of their relationship to God.
Это потому что у них есть вот это отношение к Богу.
Right? Work with enthusiasm as though you're working for the Lord.
Со страхом и трепетом.
Right? As though you are serving the Lord. Christ is ultimately who's being served.
Христос это есть тот, кому мы служим.
And now a few notes on slavery in the Roman Empire can help us understand this in context.
И пару
A few notes. Slaves in the Roman Empire, well, they were allowed to own property.
В Римской империи рабы могли иметь что-нибудь свое.
They could even own their own slaves.
Они даже могли иметь своих рабов.
A third of the population in the Roman Empire were slaves.
Третья популяции в Римской империи это были рабы.
The entire economic system functioned in this idea.
И вся экономическая система, она работала по этим номерам.
All right, but it's important to understand that slavery in Roman Empire is not what we consider slavery today.
Но важно понимать, что рабство в то время в Римской империи это не то же рабство, которое есть сегодня.
True, the master had all authority over the slave.
Может,
Вся власть, the master had all authority over the slave.
I lost the.
But the important thing I think the better parallel for us to understand is today the slaves and master picture would be more like employee and employer.
Сегодня вот эта картина господин и раб, она выглядит как босс и рабочий.
Because it functions in similar ways.
Потому что у этой системы те же функции.
What's important about this passage is Paul doesn't actually condemn slavery. Paul doesn't actually say that slavery is bad, that it's
Павел здесь не
wrong.
говорит, что рабство это что-то плохое.
All right, sometimes I think we wish that, we hope that, Paul, you really should have said something here about slavery.
Иногда нам хочется сказать, ну, Павел, может быть, ты что-нибудь сказал бы про рабство, что-нибудь негативное.
The thing though is Christianity is not about transforming, it's about transforming individuals to influence society.
Но христианство — это трансформация одного человека, чтобы тот человек потом менял общество.
It's not about changing society to then influence people.
Но не наоборот, где общество меняет одного человека.
That's why Paul is addressing the slaves. He's addressing them directly because Paul's more interested in them changing their hearts to then influence their masters.
Поэтому Павел здесь говорит к рабам, потому что ему интересно, чтобы рабы меняли сердца господина.
And what's interesting is that Paul is asking him, don't serve them just when they're watching you.
И Павел здесь говорит рабам, не служите вашим господинам только тогда, когда вам хорошо.
But try to please them all the time, not just when they're watching you.
Всегда старайтесь для них.
And see, the contrast is between visible action and hidden motive.
И здесь контраст между тем, что видно, и скрытого мотива.
Paul understands the power of our hidden motives.
Павел понимает важность и силу нашего скрытого мотива.
He's already addressed children. Their motive should be, in their obedience to parents, should be because they belong to the Lord.
Когда он говорил о детях, он говорил, что у них мотив должен быть то, что они принадлежат Господу.
Slaves likewise, they belong to the Lord.
Также и рабы, они принадлежат Господу.
Today in our jobs, how do we look at what we do when our boss is there or he isn't there? How do we act when others are not around?
сегодня, как мы ведем себя, когда мы на работе, когда босс там или когда босс отсутствует.
Our actions can have a powerful impact.
То, что мы делаем, имеет огромное значение.
Just a few weeks ago, the captain of one of the most famous football teams in America, his team won, and his team has been winning, and so there's a lot of excitement in Dallas.
Недавно в Даллас, Техас, знаменитая футбольная команда, их капитан.
Their captain, they have a new captain, and everyone's excited because the team is winning.
Все были радовались, потому что их команда выиграла.
Take my word for it. People are excited in Dallas about the Cowboys.
Это действительно так.
That's all they talk about.
Это все, о чем сейчас там говорят.
They talk about when they win.
Говорят о том, как они выиграли.
They talk about them when they lose.
Говорят тоже о команде, когда они проиграли.
Lately they've been winning.
Но сейчас они выигрывают.
And so last week it was interesting that there was a lot of talk about this captain.
Поэтому в прошлой неделе много было разговоров об этом новом капитане команды.
But it wasn't because they had won.
Но не потому, что они выиграли.
It was something completely different.
Это было что-то абсолютно другое.
It was in fact something that the captain had done when the camera was on him.
Это было то, что этот капитан команды сделал, когда его снимали.
He didn't know the camera was on him.
И он даже не знал, что камера была включена.
But he did something that has gotten the attention of all the sports writers in America.
Но он что-то сделал, что привлекло внимание.
Let's take a look. Did you miss it? He threw the cup away, missed, and then picked it up. Wow. And the entire country is losing its mind over how great this guy is. What a role model for all of our children.
Он хотел выкинуть свой стакан, но он не попал в мусорку, поэтому он поднял его еще раз.
Never mind that the team won.
Здесь не говорят о том, что команда выиграла.
It's all about the fact that he picked up a piece of garbage instead of leaving it on the ground.
Вот о чем все разговаривают, что он мусор свой подобрал за собой.
I don't know what this speaks more about, our low standards.
Может, это о наших стандартах много говорит?
Or about the power of what we do when people aren't watching.
Но это также говорит о силе того, что мы делаем, когда люди смотрят.
Right? He didn't know the camera was on him.
Он не знал, что камера была включена.
And that's why we're all the more impressed.
Поэтому мы так удивлены все.
Right? I think Paul understands the power of our internal motive.
Я думаю, что Павел, он действительно понимает, насколько важен наш внутренний мотив.
And how much that can influence others.
И насколько это может влиять на других.
And so our submission in the workplace,
поэтому наше повиновение в работе,
it can be a powerful testimony.
Это может быть свидетельством сильным.
How do we act when nobody's watching?
Как мы себя ведем, когда никто на нас не смотрит?
What do we do when we're at work? Are we focused on the minimum we can do, or how can we really obey and submit to those in charge?
Как мы ведем себя на работе? Мы работаем расслабленно или мы стараемся?
For us, the reason why we obey, why we submit as believers, is because of our relationship to Christ.
Для нас причина нашего повиновения это есть Христос.
Right? What we see is that this idea between things that are sacred versus things that are worldly, it disappears. This distinction no longer matters. Because for Paul, everything is done as unto the Lord.
Павел пишет, что все мы должны делать как для Господа.
Work with enthusiasm as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people.
Работать с энтузиазмом, будто делаем для Господа, а не для людей.
And so that's the responsibility of children. We've seen the responsibility of slaves. Today that's more of a responsibility of us as employees in our workplaces. And then Paul gives some commands to those who are in charge, right? To fathers, he says in verse 4, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. Parents are given two commands here.
Родителям даны две команды здесь.
One negative, one positive.
Одна негативная, одна позитивная.
First is do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them.
Первое, не раздражайте детей.
Right, Paul is already breaking with culture because there is absolutely no restrictions on how parents, especially fathers, deal with their household.
И здесь Павел уже отделяется от норм, можно сказать.
It's subtle, but just the very fact that he's telling them not to do something in their families is big because in the Roman Empire, fathers had complete authority over everyone in their household.
Потому что в Римской империи в то время отцы имели полный авторитет над всеми в доме.
And he's challenging that, but slightly.
И Павел как бы дает вызов этому.
Right? Instead, they're to bring them up with discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. Discipline and instruction. Oftentimes we see on Facebook, we see these videos where some parent is disciplining their child and they film it and the kid is crying. And for some reason, when we look at that, I don't know, it seems that people get a sense of satisfaction from viewing a child being disciplined.
Часто мы видим в социальных сетях или на Фейсбуке, как родители наказывают своих детей, и это кто-то снял на камеру.
But yet, the entire time, the child is absolutely terrified and embarrassed.
И ребенок, ему стыдно, и он боится.
And I think what Paul is, the ethic that Paul is giving here is that parents, as a society, we're not to put down children. We're to bring them up.
Но Павел говорит, не раздражайте их.
All right, because some of these videos border on abuse. Right? These kids, you put something up on the internet, it's there forever.
Если кто-то что-то поставит на интернет, оно там навсегда останется.
And just last week I was reading about how another parents getting sued. A child is actually suing her parents because they put all her baby pictures online.
Недавно ребенок подал суд на родителей, потому что родители выставили фотографии.
And she said they put all the pictures up there if I was sitting on the toilet as a baby, if they were changing me, all the pictures. And she was so embarrassed that she decided to sue her parents.
Она говорила, что все ее детские фотографии родители выставили на Facebook, когда она еще была младенцем.
Now I'm not saying we should sue our parents for putting up embarrassing pictures, because I'd have quite a case, I think.
Я не говорю, что мы должны по такой причине подавать в суд.
We're watching home videos over Thanksgiving, and I was embarrassed of every single time I was on the camera.
Мы недавно просматривали старые видео, и мне не совсем, может, было приятно их смотреть.
I couldn't believe it. Was I that kind of a kid?
Я не мог поверить, неужели я таким когда-то был?
I think what Paul is asking is for parents, for children, right? For us to view our children with respect. There's discipline, but there's also a sense of building them up in instruction of the Lord.
Но Павел здесь просит родителей, чтобы было уважение.
Paul is not giving parents a blank check to discipline their kids any way they want.
Павел не говорит здесь, что родители могут воспитать детей как хотят.
In fact, the discipline is qualified. There's a specific kind of discipline.
Но эта дисциплина, она специфическая должна быть.
The discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord.
Она включает учение Господне.
And in fact, if the discipline of the raising of our children is not from instruction that comes from the Lord, then the raising of children is not biblical.
И если это воспитание, оно не от Господа, то это не библейское воспитание.
Paul is calling parents to a higher standard.
Павел завышает здесь стандарт для родителей.
To raise children up in the instruction of the Lord. Raising them up in the instruction of the Lord. And this is the same word where Christ raises up the church. Paul uses the same word here to describe parents raising up their children. It's a sacrificial kind of raising. And so we've seen the parents get the instruction, but then now Paul goes on to address the masters. In verse 9, masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them. Remember, you both have the same master in heaven, and he has no favorites. All right? Masters are called in the same way to treat their slaves.
Господа также призваны иметь такое же отношение к рабам.
All right, earlier, Paul talks about all believers submitting to one another.
Раньше Павел говорил
About all believers to submit to one another. And now he's telling masters, right, in the same way, treat your slaves. See, Paul has subtly challenged the entire institution of slavery with two commands.
Павел здесь бросает вызов к рабству с этими двумя командами.
We've already addressed the slaves, but now looking at the masters, he addresses them. Treat your slaves correctly. Treat them rightly, with justice.
Он говорит здесь господам, поступайте с ними, умеряя строгость.
He's completely undermining the entire institution of slaveholding by changing not slavery, but by calling for a change in motive.
И здесь он не меняет рабство, но он призывает изменить мотив.
We all have responsibility. Here, Paul manages to address almost the entire realm of society. He addresses children, parents, slaves, and masters, and gives them a new standard by which they relate to one another.
И Павел здесь обращается ко всем и дает им новый стандарт отношений.
Right? Our authority is Christ. And
Наш
because of
авторитет — это
that,
Христос, и поэтому
all of our relationships change.
Поэтому все наши отношения должны быть другими.
How we treat one another
Как мы
changes.
относимся друг к другу, это должно быть по-другому.
And it's so difficult for us at times to recognize authority, but ultimately we're under Christ's authority. And failing to recognize that could be disastrous for us.
Бывает трудно повиноваться авторитету, но наш авторитет — это Христос.
And so when in all relationships, children, I'm obviously I'm a child. I've got parents. Parents, how we treat our children, all of us, we're called to recognize ultimately who is really in charge.
И мы призваны в общем счете понимать, кто есть главный авторитет.
And a failure to recognize who's in authority can be deadly.
Если мы это не сделаем, это очень опасно.
A captain was maneuvering his ship through a foggy part of the coast, and he saw another light from another ship.
Капитан со своей командой, они плыли, и они увидели свет вдали от другого
He saw a
корабля.
light, and so he radios in, change your course 10 degrees north.
И он сказал, поменяйте ваш курс на 10 градусов.
The call comes back, change your course 10 degrees south.
А те ответили, нет, вы поменяйте ваш курс.
The captain is a bit irritated. Why aren't they following my commands? So he says, this is Captain so-and-so. Change your course 10 degrees north.
Капитан был очень недоволен, и он повторил команду.
The reply comes back, change your course 10 degrees south.
Ответ тот же самый, нет, вы поменяйте ваш курс.
Enraged, the captain says, change your course 10 degrees north. This is a battleship.
И капитан отвечает, меняйте ваш курс, мы вооружены.
The reply comes, change your course 10 degrees south. This is a lighthouse.
Ответ, это маяк, так что меняйте ваш курс.
Oftentimes, when we don't recognize those who are really in charge, when we fail to submit, it can have deadly consequences.
Часто, когда мы не повинуемся, когда мы не признаем авторитет, могут быть очень плохие результаты.
Children are to obey parents, slaves masters, and there's supposed to be respect, vice versa. This is Paul's vision for what relationships under Christ look like.
Это есть как бы видение Павла, как отношения с авторитетом Христа, как они должны выглядеть.
And so we've seen the responsibilities of submission. These are the responsibilities we have. Now let's take a look at what are the rewards that are promised for submission. And there are a few.
Теперь давайте посмотрим на награды, которые даются за
submission. And
повиновение.
Children and slaves are given promises. They're given rewards that they're given. The first we see in verse 3. Honor your father and your mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you. and you will have a long time on earth. For children, it's long life on earth. That's the reward. That's the promise.
Для детей это «и будешь долголетен на земле». Это
And
есть обещание.
it's the first commandment that comes with a promise, because if you look at the 10 commandments, the ones before that all come with a threat.
Это первая из заповедей, которые вместе с обещанием.
Right? And so the point is that obedience to God's law, which is what children are called to do, it's the best thing for us, and it leads to a longer life.
И повиновение к Божьему закону, оно приведет к длинной жизни.
In other words, obedience to God's law brings life.
В других словах, послушание к Божьему закону, оно приносит жизнь.
Whereas disobedience, sin, leads to death.
Где так как непослушание или грех, оно ведет к смерти.
And so the point here is not to try to measure, well, how many days extra will I get for doing this? Or I mowed the lawn last week, so that's worth at least one more week. The point is that when we obey God, all right, we have long life, because we know there are instances where people die young.
И смысл здесь не измерять, сколько мне лет добавится, но понимать, что нам обещано долголетие.
And the same principle applies for parents, for slaves and masters, employees and employers. Obedience to God's will for us is the best thing for us.
Послушание к Божьей воле – это лучшее, что есть для нас.
But then in verse 8, we see the rewards for the slaves. Remember that the Lord will reward each one of us for the good we do, whether we are slaves or free. For slaves and masters, the promise of reward, all right, comes regardless of social status.
Для рабов и для господинов здесь тоже есть обещание, которое не зависит от статуса.
God will reward us regardless of our social status, right?
Бог даст нам награду независимо от статуса в обществе.
All right, it's how we obey God's commands that's important.
Это зависит от того, как мы послушны Божьим командам.
All right, employees, we should think of not necessarily always, well, am I going to get paid for this? And I know any of you who have ever worked, have ever had anyone under authority, the absolute worst attitude to ever have, right, is somebody who's always wondering if they're going to get paid for that. You know, if you're going to get paid for this, for that. And I work with a lot of college students back in Dallas, and that's one of the biggest problems we have.
Одна из самых больших проблем на работе – это когда есть сомнения, будут ли мне платить.
And when we send people out to, I sell T-shirts, we go out to different sporting events, and usually it's one person per event, and so we rely a lot on our sales reps to do what they're supposed to do.
И в моей работе я иногда продаю майки, и мы много полагаемся на наших работников.
And so there are some employees that will do everything you ask of them and more.
Некоторые боссы, они сделают рабочие, они сделают все, что их босс попросит.
They do absolutely everything for you, and you never have to worry about whether or not everything you gave them to go out is going to come back.
И тогда босс не волнуется никогда, как будет работа сделана.
But some employees we have,
некоторые рабочие,
are only worried about what they're getting paid for.
Они только волнуются за то, что им платят.
We had one employee a few years ago who was out working in Texas, and if you know anything about Texas weather, if you don't like Texas weather, they say wait 5 minutes, it'll change.
У нас был один работник в Техасе, и о Техасе говорят так, что если ты не любишь там погоду, подожди 5 минут, все изменится.
And lo and behold, he's working an event, and storm clouds start developing.
И этот работник работал, и тут появились огромные тучи.
And within actually 5 minutes, it was pouring rain.
Пошел сильный дождь.
Now, some of you might be thinking the right thing to do at this moment is to start packing stuff up.
Первая реакция, возможно, это сразу все собирать вещи.
This employee had a different idea.
Но у этого рабочего была другая идея.
He ran and sat in the car.
Он побежал и сел в машину.
while the storm completely ruined all of the t-shirts.
И в то время шторм практически уничтожил все майки.
I'll bet you that when it started raining, he said to himself, I'm not getting paid for this.
И когда пошел дождь, он, наверное, сказал себе, мне за это никто не будет платить.
He ended up getting fired, so he's really not getting paid for anything anymore.
А потом его уволили, к сожалению.
And so the point here is when we focus only on what we're getting paid for or only what we're responsible for doing, we miss opportunities to serve and to submit to others. And in fact, when we refuse to do so, we might have negative consequences.
Смысл здесь, что мы не должны только фокусировать на за то, что нам платят.
We've seen the responsibilities. We've now looked at the rewards that God gives us, that God gives to those who obey. Finally, let's take a look at the routine that Paul lays out in this text.
И последнее — это порядок.
All right, the routine here, the main point is that we're to submit to Christ.
И порядок здесь главное — это повиноваться ко Христу.
He's our true master.
Он есть наш Господь.
Not only does that change our relationship to God,
Это не только меняет наше отношение к Богу,
but true submission to Christ,
но истинное повиновение ко Христу.
it changes our relationships with everyone.
Это меняет наши отношения со всеми.
Children obeying parents,
Дети, которые повинуются родителям,
slaves obeying masters.
рабы, которые повинуются господам.
Ultimately, God is being served.
И в конце
God is the one being served.
Богу мы служим.
All right. And Paul is addressing not a society. He's not addressing society as a whole, but he's addressing people individually.
И здесь Павел, он говорит лично каждому.
All right, because the message of the gospel is not about changing society in order to change people, but it's about changing us, one person at a time, and then we will truly impact society. That's the power of the gospel. So Paul is addressing motives.
Итак, Павел здесь говорит о мотивах.
One heart change at a time.
Менять одно сердце.
And I wonder today, what does that look like for you? Right? Not all of you are children anymore, but all of you are parents. Not all of you may be employees. Some of you may own your own businesses. But regardless of what relationship status we have, right? What does obedience look like?
И вопрос, как это послушание выглядит сегодня для нас?
In your place of work.
Там, где мы работаем.
If you were to make a change in motive this week, what would that look like?
Если мы поменяем мотив на этой неделе, как это будет выглядеть?
I think that's the challenge of this text for us.
Вот этот вызов, который Павел дает.
And for us not just to be hearers of the word, but to be doers of the word.
Не просто слышать слово.
The challenge is for us to change the way we submit to others.
Он хочет, чтобы мы изменили себя, как мы повинуемся к другим.
Church, that's the challenge of the text for us today.
Это есть вызов, который нам дан.
Maybe you're thinking of a work situation you have or within your family, but I want you to take a minute, take a few seconds, think about what does that actually look like. Today, that looks, for me, what that looks like is going home after church and putting up Christmas lights.
Для меня это прийти домой после церкви и повесить огни.
I'm going to be applying that text later today on a ladder. And so I want to encourage you to think about what does that look like? Not to just hear this and think, okay, submission to Christ, but to actually make a change in your relationships this week. You don't have to change everything, but if you can change one thing.
Я хочу, чтобы мы на этой неделе сделали вот эти изменения в наших отношениях.
If you can change one aspect of your relationships.
И если вот одну вещь,
maybe it's picking something up after you missed throwing it away.
Может даже поднять за собой мусор.
We never know the kind of impact that that's going to have and the kind of testimony that will be to who our true master is.
Мы никогда не знаем, насколько сильно вот эта простая вещь может быть.
Let's pray.
Давайте помолимся.